Just hit the notification.
Hello. Let me start now.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. Hello, group. My name is Leroy Simon. I've been a member of the club for here a couple of years now. I've lived in Florida now for 35 years. I moved down here from Ohio, like a lot of other people, to get away from the snow and the cold. And I've collected butterflies for when I was in high school. I've been very much interested in photographing them for many years now. These some of the butterflies and moths in this program I've reared. The first image I have on the screen is a butterfly of a swallowtail called a rose that is Asian, that was taken at the butterfly house up in Gainesville. And some of this one of the swallowtails. Swallowtail butterflies, along with some other ones, don't always land on the plants when they're feeding on the plants. Sometimes they'll just hover, like this butterfly is hovering and feeding on the plant, putting his feeding tube down into the flower and just hovering over the flower. This is a picture of skunk cabbage. We people up north in the northern part of the United States, eastern United States, we're always looking forward to the early spring flowers. This is the first flower that blooms in the spring. It blooms before the snows are finished. It's pollinated by flies. This is one of the flowers that I found when I moved to Florida, a passion vine. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful flower, but it grows around here like a weed. You'll find them along ditches and in fields, and it grows pretty much like a weed. It's the food plant of a common butterfly found in this area, of 3 butterflies found in this area. This one is a zebra longwing. It's found most months during the year, and its caterpillars feed on the passion vine. Odd thing about this butterfly, it will only lay eggs on the very newest growth of the passion vine, and only in where the passion vine is growing in the shade. If a passion vine is growing out in an open field, you won't never find any of the caterpillars on it. But if the passion vine is growing in a shaded area, this butterfly will lay a bunch of eggs on the very tip of the newest growth. This is the caterpillar of the longwing butterfly, the zebra longwing. It has these spikes on it, but they're harmless. They look like it might be fearsome, but it's really harmless. And these spikes won't hurt you. This is another butterfly that feeds on the passion vine. Now this butterfly will lay its eggs anywhere on the passion vine, old growth or new growth, shady or sunny, anywhere where the passion vine grows. It'll lay its eggs on the passion vine. It's called the Gulf fritillary. It's one of the more common butterflies here in Florida. This is the caterpillar of the Gulf fritillary. It again has these spiky looking stickers on his caterpillar, but they're harmless. The third butterfly that feeds on the passion vine is a variegated fritillary. It's not as common as the other 2, but there's quite a lot of them around here in Florida. The next group of butterflies are called sulfurs or whites. This is a checkered white or variegated. It's the white of the butterfly that's feeding on a flower growing along the road. This is an orange-barred sulfur. This is a butterfly that is one of the largest of the sulfurs. It's more found in Florida and also found down into the tropics. This is the orange-barred sulfur. It's feeding on a flower. You can see its feeding tube going down into the flower. This is an American painted lady. It's quite a common butterfly here. In this group of butterflies, they're sometimes called bush-footed butterflies because it looks like it only has 4 legs, but it has a pair of legs that are not developed very well, that are up near its head, that but it only uses 4 of its 6 legs, and they're called bush-footed butterflies. This butterfly, if you can imagine this, you see the bright red on this butterfly's wing. If this butterfly were at rest, it would tuck its upper wing down into the lower wing, so you wouldn't see any of that red. And it would be down in the weeds, and down in the weeds is the antenna tucked up inside its wings. It would be very well hidden down in the weeds, and it would be very well camouflaged. If I were to look for the caterpillar of the American painted lady, this is what I would look for. This plant is called a everlasting, the weed that feeds on it. It's a common yard weed, and you see a little ball of food, the seed head at the top. That's if I would break that apart with my fingers, you might find this caterpillar inside. The caterpillars spend the day mostly inside that little ball of seed head. And if you break it open, you find one inside the caterpillar. Another butterfly that feeds on a different plants is the buckeye butterfly. The buckeye butterflies are found in eastern United States all the way up like into Ohio. But whereas up in Ohio, it's kind of rare, down here it's one of the more common butterflies. It feeds on the snapdragon family. This is a red spotted purple. This butterfly feeds on willows, and it's also found up in the northern United States, and like in Ohio, it was pretty common there. And it's there's quite a lot of them around here too. And the butterflies, the caterpillars that feed on willow hibernate during the winter as a caterpillar. Butterflies can spend a hibernation during winter either as eggs, or as caterpillars, or as chrysalids, or as adults. So different ones spend it in different ways. This one spends it as a small caterpillar in a rolled up leaf. And in the spring, when the new leaves come out, it'll start feeding again. This is a white peacock butterfly. This butterfly is found near water, like around ditches or small lakes or ponds. It feeds on some water plants that grow near the water. It's a small, kind of a medium-sized butterfly. This is the viceroy butterfly. The viceroy butterflies are found in Ohio also, and all the way down here. But the ones down here are a little more rust colored, whereas the ones that found up north are more orange colored, like the monarch butterfly. The viceroy is a mimic of the monarch, but here it also looks sort of like the a butterfly that's related to the monarch in the same family. It has a little more rust colored on its wings. So it's kind of evolved into a in between, not quite as orange as the ones up north. It also feeds on willow and overwinters as a small caterpillar. This is a monarch butterfly. The previous butterfly I was telling you was a mimic of the monarch. It glides the same way and flaps its wings the same way as a monarch. But monarchs are distasteful to birds. So whereas a bird might eat a monarch and then throw up and spit it out, it would not bother monarchs after that. Well, if it ate a monarch and got sick, it would maybe would avoid eating the other two that are perfectly palatable. This is a male monarch. I could tell it's a male because on the bottom of its wings, it has these two little black patches in the middle of the bottom wing. Those are scent glands that are only found on the male. Female monarchs have thicker veins and they don't have those little scent glands. This is a food of the monarch butterfly. It's one of the foods. Monarch butterflies will feed on milkweeds, but they'll feed on any species of milkweed. There's a lot of different species of milkweed. This is one that isn't found up north, but it's pretty common around here in fields. And it's one of the plants that monarch caterpillars will feed on. Birds will avoid feeding monarch caterpillar, feeding on monarch butterfly caterpillar because they're also distasteful because the food that they feed on that gives them their bad taste. And the caterpillars have what they call warning colors. This is a spice bush swallowtail. The spice bush swallowtail is one of 8 swallowtails that are found around Central Florida. This one feeds on cherry. This is a caterpillar of a spice bush swallowtail. You notice the 2 little orange things at the top sticking out of the head? Those are scent glands that if the caterpillar is disturbed, it'll push these scent glands out and put out a very strong odor to the area. And all of the swallowtails have these scent glands. They can retract them so you won't see them, but if they're disturbed, they'll stick them out and then it'll make a strong odor. And it's supposed to be one of the ways that they try to avoid predators. The large eye you see as part of the caterpillar's back is just a decoration to try to avoid predators. The real head is just to the right of those 2 scent glands at the top. And this caterpillar you can see has got silk from its legs. It's probably getting ready to mold into a chrysalis. This is a pipevine swallowtail. And it's one of the swallowtails that birds avoid because it's distasteful. You find it in open wooded areas, and it's pretty common, but the caterpillars are not easily found. This is another swallowtail, but this one doesn't have tails, but it's also considered to be part of the swallowtail family, which Batis is the scientific name. It's more widely distributed into South America. It feeds on members of the pipevine family. This is a Palamedes swallowtail. And swallowtails spend their time just hanging out during the night, and with their wings closed, they won't fly until it warms up in the daytime. And here, this butterfly has spent the night or during a rainy time when it got all covered with water. It won't start flying until it dries off and that water evaporates. Then during the day, it'll warms up, it'll start flying. If you were to see the top of this butterfly, it would look like this. That's with the wings open, that same one that you just saw with the wings closed. This is a giant swallowtail. This is the largest swallowtail in the US. Although the other swallowtails in the US may be close to the same size, this is considered to be the largest of the butterfly in the US. Others in South America, of course, are bigger. This is the underside of the giant swallowtail. Very different color than the top side. Sometimes they rest with their wings open, and sometimes they rest with their wings closed. The caterpillar of the giant swallowtail is called an orange dog, and it feeds primarily on citrus and related plants. This one feeding on prickly ash, but they are considered a pest of citrus. They have a coloring that looks like a bird doo-doo, so a bird dropping. So they don't try to hide. They'll be sitting right out in the open on top of a leaf, whereas most caterpillars will be found on the underside of a leaf or in a rolled up leaf. But these caterpillars don't try to hide. They just try to avoid being eaten by looking like bird droppings. This is a black swallowtail. This is a male. They feed on plants belonging to the carrot family, like endive and Queen Anne's lace and carrots and dill and plants like that. They feed on domestic plants and other plants that are related to the carrot family. And this is the female. The female is quite different looking than the male. Here was the male, and here's the female, but they're the same species. The females have a different look. They're darker and don't have as much yellow on them, more blue on them, easily told apart. Some butterflies, the males and females look just like, very much alike, but some of them, they look different. This is a zebra swallowtail. It feeds on plants belonging to the pawpaw family. And I used to belong to a camera club, and I put this picture in a camera club. One of the people in the camera club liked to take pictures of flowers. He says, "What a beautiful flower spoiled by that butterfly." Got a little laugh. They are fairly common around here, and they are found mostly in open woods or in wooded areas or open woods. They're fast flyers. This is a tiger swallowtail, female. I can tell it's a female because of the blue on the bottom wing. The males don't have as much blue on the bottom wing as the female, but the males can be either, all the males are yellow. The females can be either yellow or they can be brown like the next picture. The same batch of eggs can have some females looking brown like this, or dark like this, or they can be yellow like the previous slide. But the males are always all yellow. The next several slides are some of the smallest butterflies. This is called a Cassius blue. And it's one of the small butterflies that you find in open meadows. You might find them in your yard, but mostly they go unnoticed because they're so small. This is another blue butterfly in that same family. They're very tiny. The next several species belong to the hair streak family. These are small butterflies that have tails for the most part. Most of them have tails. And when they land, they always close their wings. They never land with their wings open. Once in a while, they might if they're sunning themselves, but most of the time when they land, they close their wings up. And when they close their wings, they move their bottom wing up and down. And that makes these tails fluctuate and move around it. To a bird, it'll look like antenna. And they always are colorful toward that antenna. And a bird might grab the butterfly back wing, get a little piece of wing, thinking he's grabbing the butterfly by the head, but that's the tail end, and he'll get a piece of wing and fly off with a piece of wing. This is another butterfly that belong to that same family. One of the more colorful ones is called a green hair streak. Not so common, but it is found here. This is a gray hair streak. Notice all these hair streaks have this colorful tail end, and by these fault heads, they look like antenna, but they're really just part of the wing. And if a butterfly loses part of its wing, it can still fly away and it won't hurt it. This one is called a red banded hair streak. It's one of the more colorful hair streaks. They're tiny, and for the most part, they go very unnoticed. If they were big, they would be very noticeable. They're colorful, but because they're tiny, they're not noticed. Notice on the end of the antenna, it has like little clubs on the end of the antenna. That's how you can tell a butterfly from a moth. Butterflies have little clubs on the end of the antenna, but moths have either pointed or feathered antenna. Some moths fly in the daytime, some moths fly at night. Most moths fly at night, like this next one. This is one of the moths that have feathered antenna. This is a large moth, like over 4 inches, 4 or 5 inches across. It's called a polyphemus moth. And the males have these real wide antenna that they use to find the females. When a female comes out of the cocoon, it'll hang there on the cocoon and put out a pheromone. That's a scent that will attract the male moths. And the male moths use this antenna to find the females. The females don't generally fly until after they've mated with the male. As I mentioned before, the difference between a moth and a butterfly is the antenna. This is a day flying moth. So some people think, well, moths are them little brown things that fly around the lights at night, which is true. But a lot of moths can be very brightly colored and fly in the daytime. And this is one a moth that flies in the daytime that's very colorful. And it has pointed, not clubbed antenna. This is from Costa Rica, but they can be colorful moths that fly around it in the daytime here also. This is the scales on a wing of a moth. Butterflies and moths both have scales on their wings. That's where you get the color. If they didn't have scales on their wings, they would be bare looking, like the center part of this wing, of this eye spot. This powder, that if you get the powder on your fingers from a butterfly or a moth, you pick it up by the wings, you'll get powder. The powder is made out of these little tiny scales. And this is a large magnification of one of those eye spots on a polyphemus moth. Here's a picture of a moth that's without being magnified so much. This is a female moth. Remember I showed you the antenna of the large moth before they had the big feathered antenna? This is the same kind of a moth, only a female, has narrower antenna, very thin, whereas the male uses the wide antenna to locate the female. The female don't need those wide antenna. And the eye spots are normally, when the moth is at rest, its wings will either be folded up or else the top wing will cover the bottom wing and those eye spots will be hidden. If the moth is disturbed, it'll open its wings and flop around, and these eye spots might deter a predator. When these large moths, of the Saturnidae family, the largest moths that we have around in the US, when they're resting at night, they'll be attracted to buildings, to the lights at buildings. If they've been sitting there a while, they can't fly. They can't fly until they vibrate their wings and warm up their body temperature. If they're outside on a hot day, like it's close to 95 degrees out and they're out in a sunny spot where they get in the sun on them, they can just fly away. But if they're resting overnight, they can't fly until their wings are vibrated and warmed up their body temperature. This is the largest moth in the United States, although the Polyphemus moth and some of the other moths in this same family are almost as big. This was a Cecropia moth. It's found in northern Florida. I've only ever seen one down in Leesburg, but they usually are pretty rare if they get down this far. But they're common in eastern United States up to northern United States. This is a caterpillar of the Cecropia moth. This is a fourth instar. As caterpillars grow, they shed their skin 5 or 6 times during their growth period, and they change color and sometimes they change shape as they grow. All these knobs across the top of the caterpillar, those are they call them tubercles. It's got little stickers on them. Well, they're harmless. They look like they might be stickers that would hurt you, but they're not. You can handle them and it won't hurt you. All these little white spots across the caterpillar's body, those are called spiracles. That's how caterpillars breathe. They breathe through those spiracles. This is an Io moth. Again, this moth, when it's resting, its top wings will be covering up those bottom wings, and it'll look like a dead leaf. So it'll avoid being eaten by a bird because it'll look like a dead leaf. This is a female, and the next slide is a male. The male looks quite different. This is a male, and they can be a little more yellow than this one. But the next slide is another male that's found further south. They have what they call a cline, where the same species of moth will change color as it gets to a different area. Further south, some of these Io moths might look like this one, quite a different color. This is a caterpillar of the Io moth. This is sometimes they're called bullseye moths. There's a very large family of moths. It has a few in the United States and a lot of them in Central and South America. Many other species in South and Central America. And all of the caterpillars have these bristles. These bristles are stinging spines. If you brush your hand against those bristles or touch them with your hand, you'll draw your hand back like you got stung by a bee. And that's how they try to avoid being eaten. It doesn't help them much with some other predators like ichneumon flies or tactin flies. Parasitic flies will lay eggs in them, and the eggs will feed on the caterpillar as the caterpillar is feeding on the leaves. This is a Luna moth, and this is a male. The females have thinner antennae than this. But this is a male. It's a common moth that's a lot of times found at gas stations where the lights are on all night. One of our more colorful moths. This is a caterpillar. These little short bristles on this caterpillar are harmless. They're completely harmless. They feed on I forget the name of the food plant. Anyhow, this is a royal walnut moth. This is a male and a female. With some moths, they're about the same size. The females always have a little bigger body than the male. But with some moths, they vary quite a bit in size. The female has to be bigger because it carries the eggs. The moths will lay like over 100 eggs, some out of them. And the male, all he has to do is have a little sperm to fertilize the eggs. And this, two of them are side by side here. It shows you the size difference. This is the caterpillar of the that same moth, the hickory horn devil. The moth is a royal walnut moth, but the caterpillar is called a hickory horn devil. These horns and spines on this caterpillar are harmless. They look like they'd be one of the worst ones that stick you with those spines. Although they might feel sharp, they're not going to hurt you. A lot of people would think that that I just walked through the woods and saw this caterpillar like that munching on leaves and took a picture of it. But that's not how it happened. This was a setup, which I'll show you later. I used clips and a file and clips and to get it in this position for the photograph. The background was my front lawn. This is a imperial moth male. They have a variation in their coloring. The males are more similar colored like this, but the females can have a lot more yellow on them than the males usually do. Next one is another imperial moth male. See, this one has a similar pattern, has a bit more yellow, and but it has a generally same pattern, but it's another color variation. And the next one is a female. The females are usually more yellow like this. They're bigger than the males, slightly bigger. They're always spotted like this, and they can have more brown on their top wings, similar to the males, but they're bigger. They have a bigger, thicker body, and they have much smaller antennae. The same batch of eggs from an imperial moth can have different colors caterpillars. They can be either green or brown or dark brown or rust. And here is one that's one of the green ones. Again, these little round circles on the side, those are spiracles. That's how the caterpillars breathe. They breathe through the spiracles. It has some horns and a lot of hair, but they're not stinging. They're harmless. Here it's feeding on sycamore, but they feed on many broadleaf trees and shrubs. Here's another caterpillar of the same moth, can be brown. They can have the same batch of eggs, can have some brown and some green and some rust. This is called a leopard moth. This is one of the moths that a lot of times you find around buildings at night where the lights are on all night. Like if you drive out through the forest, you go to a gas station where the lights are on all night, you might see moths hanging around the building. You might see one of these. But the ones that you see at the building, almost all the time they'll be frayed with a lot of their wing pattern will be frayed to where it's bare looking with no coloring on the wings, because their scales are very loosely attached on this particular moth. This one is fresh because it just come out of the cocoon or chamber. Moths don't always spin a cocoon. Butterflies generally always do a bare chrysalid or pupa, but some moths spin a cocoon, some spin a real hard, compact, hardened cocoon. Some of them dig a hole in the ground and pupate in an underground chamber. Some moths spin a loose cocoon in a litter of the leaf litter. Some of them hang on a tree. Moths and butterflies, predators are birds. A lot of people think, well, birds eat the caterpillars, but a lot of caterpillars are eaten by other insects or spiders. They're caterpillars are attacked by Nubian flies and parasitic wasps. And here this, not unusual to see an insect in the wild that's damaged. Like butterflies can have a part of their antenna missing, or can have frayed wings and beat up wings. A butterfly can fly around with about half its wing gone. But here, this particular spider is supposed to have 8 legs, but it's got 1 leg missing. That's not really unusual to see an insect in the wild that's damaged. But spiders are one of the predators that feed on butterflies and moths. Other spiders don't spin webs. This is one of the spiders that doesn't spin a web. It's called a jumping spider. It's a small spider that pounces on its prey. That's how they get their name, jumping spider. It has web, it has silk, but it doesn't have a web. Sometimes if they will take a long jump and get ballooned by the air currents and can go quite a ways away from where they were just by being blown on a wind. Like I said, caterpillars are eaten by other insects quite often. See these cocoons on the back of this caterpillar? Some people think, well, those are eggs. Those are not eggs. Those are cocoons of a parasitic wasp or parasitic Nubian fly that was feeding on the caterpillar as the caterpillar was feeding on the leaves. And these are cocoons that were spun after the parasite crawled out of the caterpillar and made these cocoons. There were a lot more on them, but most of them fell off before I took the picture. At the same time, it was parasitized by an insect feeding in from the inside. There's a bug that was feeding on the caterpillar from the outside. It pierced the caterpillar and this caterpillar had no chance of making it to a moth. This is called a very small caterpillar. It's called saddleback caterpillar. You can see how it gets its name. It looks like it's got a saddle on its back. See the spines on this caterpillar? These bristles are very bad. They're a very bad stinger. I was getting leaves to feed my bigger moth caterpillar, and I wanted to get some fresh leaves. I was getting some cherry leaves, and I brushed against this caterpillar with my hand, and my hand was sore for a week because these caterpillars have a very potent sting. They're a tiny caterpillar, but they have a very bad sting. I thought I was going to go home and raise that caterpillar to a moth, but here's what it looked like about 3 days later. All the time it was feeding on the leaves, it was being fed on by a parasite. And these are cocoons that the parasite crawled out of the caterpillar and made these cocoons. I mentioned before about the scales on the wings of butterflies and moths. This is one of the tropical butterflies that doesn't have very much scales. You see the brown on the edges of the wings? Those are scales. But the clear spots are areas where the wing is translucent. That's where it doesn't have any scales on the wing. And this is a part of a large group of butterflies that where part of the wing doesn't have any scales on it. Butterflies can spend their winters or hibernate as either eggs, adult butterflies, caterpillars, or chrysalids, or cocoon, like they call it a cocoon. Butterflies usually don't spin a cocoon. They just shed their skin and change into what they call a chrysalid. You see the old caterpillar skin at the top? This butterfly caterpillar just attached itself to a leaf, and after a few days, it changed inside and shed its skin, and it looked like this. This was the pupa. This was so brightly colored if you held it in your hand, it would look like you got gold in your hand. It was so bright. I've seen other chrysalids at one time that look like little pieces of dirt, but they can vary greatly. Some of them are very brightly colored and very colorful, and others can look very dingy and dull. You want to collect moths sometime? This is how the collectors get them. I went down, this is taken down into tropics, but in a wooded area around here that's a long ways away from any lights, you might get a sheet that's covered with moths. There's a big variety of moths, both large and small, that were came to this sheet down in Ecuador. A friend of mine, I visited him, and he has several large moths on this sheet, and has several sphinx moths, and it has. My friend was a collector, then he kept a collection of moths and butterflies. I just collected them long enough to get a picture of them, and I'd put when I'd get a little moths, I'd put them in jars, and in the morning I'd try to get them onto a stick or a leaf, and coax them onto a leaf so I could get a picture of them, or onto a little stick so I could get a picture of them. And these moths were attracted during the night, and during the morning after we turned the light out, it would start getting daylight. It was still hanging on the sheet where they flew to the sheet during the night. These are some of the moths that were on that sheet that I photographed the next morning. This is the Arctic moth. Another Arctic moth. One of the interesting things about moths is the shape that they have their wings in when they're at rest. If this moth would be truly at rest, it would tuck its legs down underneath its wing, so it would be you wouldn't see the legs. The antennae are tucked underneath the wing. You can see one of them sticking out a little bit on the right. But usually when they're at rest, they will tuck their legs under their wing, and they'll tuck their antenna under their wing. This is called a clown-faced moth. You can see how it gets its name. Its head, the top of the thorax looks like a clown face. These are small moths that were attracted to the sheet during the night. A big variety, and some of them are very colorful. And again, the shape and the way they position themselves, the way they lay their antenna. This is one of the smaller moths that lays its antenna down along its back when it's at rest. Some of them more often they lay their antenna along the edge of the wing or underneath their wing. This is one of the moths that rests with its wings wide open, and its antenna and its legs are tucked under the wing, but its wings are spread wide open, and it rests with their looking flat with the wings open like a butterfly. This is a very, very tiny moth that was collected at the sheet. The moths, some of the very tiny moths can be very colorful, and the same thing with butterflies. When you travel a lot, you're going to come up with a few stories. I was down in Ecuador, and I was sleeping in my bed, and I felt something by my ear. I put my hand up there and rubbed something rubbing against my ear. I felt that cat. Oh, that's that wild cat. This was an ocelot that come into my room at night and was nosing my ear. So he scared me, and I jumped out of bed and run over and turned on the light. And the wildcat was scared, it run under the bed. And I finally shooed him out of the room with my handle of my butterfly net. The next morning, this girl worked in a hotel. I told her about it. And I said, I'd like to get a picture of him. I knew he was around there because I see where they I saw him at night, and I saw on the steps where they was putting food out for him. And I said, I wanted to get a picture of him, and he run back in behind the washing machine. He says, oh, you want a picture of him? I'll get him for you. And she goes in there and gets him out from behind the washing machine, comes out holding me. I had time for one quick snapshot. Didn't even get the time to compose it. I just got one quick shot and cut her foot off. And then the cat wanted down. If a 35-pound wild cat wants down, it gets down. It's hard to hold a domestic cat, but a 35-pound wild cat, you're not going to hold it if it wants down. I was sitting on a bus, or I was sitting on a piece of concrete, block of concrete, waiting for the bus one day in a town square. And this monkey come up behind me, grabbed the hat off my head, and run up in a tree with it and started playing with it. And everybody around there was laughing. And I was grabbing a picture of the monkey up there with my hat. There's another. The next thing that happened, he dropped the hat and I run over and stepped on it because I wanted it back. And that's the end of my program. This is a Saturnidae from China. I hope you enjoyed the program. Are there any questions? I guess nobody's got any questions.
Leroy, we have 4 chats.
What?
Let me go into the chats.
Oh, okay.
Well, the first one was from Karen Madigan, local species, nice, thank you. And Karen Madigan again, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. And Karen again, the defense mechanisms are amazing. Maybe you'd like to talk about that. And Karen witnessed the process of a hornworm caterpillar being host for a braconid wasp on my tomato plants.
Yeah, like I said, wasps and tachinid flies and tachinid wasps and wasps and spiders, and a lot of people think, well, birds eat the caterpillars and the moths, but there might be more of them killed by other insects than there are by birds in a lot of areas, a lot of times.
Karen was also interested in the color variations. Are they evident in Florida as well?
Yes, yes. Yes, they can, like those caterpillars of the imperial moth, the same batch of eggs, you can have 3 different colors of caterpillars. They can be brown, or they can be rust, or they can be green, or they can be pale brown or dark brown. But other species, the caterpillars will all look alike. In some species, most species, probably the caterpillars all look alike, but in some species, the caterpillars can look very different. Also, the caterpillars can look very different as they change their molt. As they molt, the caterpillars usually shed their skin 5 times, and they can look different from one molt to the next. And this is especially so in some of the Saturnidae moths. The moths caterpillars can look very, very different from one molt to the next.
The next question was, do praying mantis attack caterpillars?
I haven't seen it. I would think probably they would sometimes, but I haven't really witnessed it myself.
Okay, are
Praying
there any-
mantises usually feed on most any other kind of insect, so I suppose they could sometimes get caterpillars.
do we have any other questions for Leroy? Anyone? Okay, Leroy, that was an incredible presentation.
Well, thank you for that.
They're so varied and just even in the same species. It's just incredible. Thank you very much. Anyone else have any?
I had one other question, one other comment I might make. I didn't mention it in my presentation, but there are a couple ways of rearing a moth if you want to rear a moth or a butterfly. One way, the easiest way, I wouldn't necessarily say it's the best way, but it's the easiest way. If you take a bag that's made out of like old curtain, that's a fine mesh curtain, and you sew it into a bag, slip the bag over the food plant and tie it at the bottom. And then the caterpillar will be inside feeding on the leaves and protected from some of the predators. Other predators can get at it, even though it's inside the bag. Like tiny ants can get inside of the bag, and I've had a bunch of caterpillars I was rearing that way, and tiny ants got in and killed every one of them. But most of the time, you can rear them that way, and you'll be able to get cocoons or chrysalids they'll feed inside the bag, and most predators won't get at them. If they get on the mesh of the curtain, then other predators like shield bugs or can pierce them like that. It showed that one being pierced by another bug. But that's the easy way to rear them, or you can rear them in plastic containers and start out with a small jar, and don't worry about punching holes in the lid. More important not to have the food plant dry up. But you can, as they get older, you got to have a bigger container. But I usually, when I reared them, I didn't worry about punching holes in the jar when they were small. I worried more about the plant drying up. But as they got older, some of them, they needed more room and more air, better not to be in a too stuffy of a container. And I got bigger and bigger containers to rear them in. And sometimes I would take a little medicine bottle and punch holes in it and stick the food plant in the holes. Sometimes if you would drill a hole in the top of a medicine bottle and stick the food plant in it, if it wasn't tight on the sides, some of the times the caterpillar would crawl down the stem and crawl down into the water and drown. Not always smart.
Okay, Karen also said, I learned a ton of new facts. Thank you. So Leroy, thank you very much for your presentation. It was incredible.
Oh.